Three, two, one. Mike should be on. Hey, folks. So I was delayed this week by a couple of incidents. My son fell out of a tree and broke his arm. He's doing really, really well, but that was a pretty big shock for about 2 days. He's got a little brace, and he's happy as a little champ. He did so well, but that was scary. So I'm glad we're okay. And so this was delayed, but I've been planning this for a little while. Happy to jump into it because I really do want to make sure that I'm still doing weekly content. So this is going to be a little bit faster, a little bit more raw than usual, and I'll probably post it a little bit kind of a strange time. But I want to make sure it's out there in the world to make sure we're having this conversation. And I apologize for the wait, but it was for good reason. Okay, so we are talking about the Rebel Alliance, and there's a lot of shade going on towards Rebels right now in competitive and tournament play. So we've got one tournament winning list, one list that won a major sizable tournament, and well, it was a sizable tournament. And then we've got a couple different conversations, and then called in some backup. I've been asking around for like what lists people are thinking of running, what are some really powerful things that Rebels can do better than other factions. And I want to touch on that. I want to touch specifically on Rebels' strength as a faction, what they're doing right now, and then kind of what pieces maybe people are sleeping on, or what may be the most competitive pieces out there. And as part of that, I also want to make sure I'm taking a look at the current meta, some of the top lists that have been winning, and kind of look at that as a reference point, like major archetypes and some of the things that are probably holding Rebels back as a faction and acting as the spoilers that are keeping them from getting into the competitive top tier. Now, Rebels are one of the OG factions, one of the original trilogy factions, probably the second most faction or most second most popular faction in the game. So I don't want to dismiss them outright just because of the faction itself. Also because I genuinely think there's something there, because this is a faction that's dominated the past several metas, um, and then had some pretty long dry spells too. But I think there's something there. And just to go ahead and hammer the point home, one thing about the X-Wing meta is even looking at the Sith Taker Open, you're talking 140 players, right? Wildly different skill levels, wildly different experience levels. They came for different reasons with different backgrounds, different levels of testing, and played different levels of, their best game. Maybe somebody showed up drunk, maybe somebody was sick that week, somebody didn't actually want to make day two. So even with an event that size, the actual pool of data that we have is still very, very low. So, like the total number of 2 day events we have, the total number of cut events, the total number of top tier competitive play games that we've got is still really small, even at X-Wing's peak. And it's not doing badly right now, but even at X-Wing's peaks, we never really had a clear picture of like a solved meta. We've never had that. So I am always of the opinion that there's always something new to discover, which is probably frustrating. I think last week somebody said that they find my optimism repulsive, but you know what? That's why I'm here. So, okay, so we'll go ahead and tap through it. So, first thing I wanted to look at this is the Texas State Championship from this year, from 2026, a couple months back. And this is Rob's winning list. This is what he won with. You've got the generic Rebel Gauntlet with Leia and Chewbacca. So heavy support, really durable, hard to kill, gets free tokens if it takes damage, is ignoring crits if you don't shoot at it in bullseye. Got a rig cargo chute to really mess things up. You can hide stuff behind it and keep your other stuff more durable. Like that's just a beef piece to keep everything else alive. You got Benthic two tubes in there as another durable piece, who is also passing off focus tokens. And he's just again a durable piece, but also with Jin in there, he gets two focus tokens, and anytime he gets one or any other ship in the squad gets one that he transfers to it or takes a focus action, they can change the focus to an evade. So they can choose whether they get an evade token or a focus token, which is awesome. So, and then Leia's ability to manipulate dials, that already really highlights some of the things that Rebels do really, really well, and that is support pieces. They've got beef, they've got hit points, they've got support pieces. No other faction is as efficient or as good at passing tokens around. So here you're in those top two pilots, you're already looking at pilots that get multiple tokens, share tokens, and then also can do dial manipulation that most other factions can't pull off. And then you get to the I-6 Harris and Dula in the A wing with Juke, Magpulse warheads, and prospectored cannons, who's also able to pass around tokens and I believe locks. So Hera is able to pass things around there and is a really scary piece and is an I-6 A wing. And then, of course, you have Kyle Katarn in the Hawk, in the Moldy Crow Hawk, with Hopeful Perceptive Copilot. So he's also able to get the double focus tokens. He can choose to have some of them be evades, and then because of Moldy Crow, he can choose to bank those. So you've got four ships in there. Hera's hard to hit. She's also I6, so she's very maneuverable. Um, Everybody else is banking so many tokens with the option to take evades that it is really, really hard to pick off an individual piece of this list. Hera's the one you could really isolate and take down, but you also have to deal with the other four. Excuse me, other three. I keep doing that. And that just becomes problematic. It's a very durable list, and it's got some punch. It's got some punch, especially looking at. Actually, double check. Yeah, still on. It's got quite a bit of punch there because you're looking at. Hang on, actually, I need to check that. Back at it, as we say. Yes, so you can isolate Hera and take her down. She's still an A-wing, even at I6. So that still is a piece that is potentially one you could take out and get easy points from, easily remove pieces from the list. Even then, you still probably have to spend a lot of resources chasing her. She is I6, she's got juke, so if she's got an evade, she's going to be inclined to take an evade because that's also where she gets part of her offensive mods as well. So the combination of juke on an A-wing is really, really good because it makes them as hard to kill as possible while also giving them the offensive mod. And of course, Hera being the I6, good start. So very strong. And then also you got the coordinate from Benthic. And I believe, yeah, okay, just there. So Benthic has the coordinate, so he can coordinate Hera to give her the target lock if she gets the evade, or you can pass that focus from Benthic, change it to an evade, give it to Hera. So you have a lot of ways to trigger these abilities and share tokens, even if your ships are doing different things. It's efficient, it's durable, has a fast piece in it, has decent board control, so it's also pretty strong in objectives. Like this is a good list. Um, and this one stands out for a couple different reasons too. We'll talk about that more in a second. Just checking on this. So this is Rob, and he said, "This is why I wonder if I'm being a fool taking Rebels to Worlds," which yeah, it's fine. And we had an interesting little back and forth conversation about this. And I did want to go ahead and say, the list has taken me some time to wrap my head around. So there are a couple times in my initial video, this one, where I talked about the list and was just a little bit surprised by it because it's a combination of pieces I've never seen. You've got Hera with a generic gauntlet, which like, what? And that by itself was such a strange combination that it took some figuring out to look at it, right? So that was why I did the what are you doing? But I'm really impressed with this list, and I think that Rob here telling himself he's a bad list builder is underselling himself. Because Rob, you did something really clever, really unique that I haven't seen anyone else do before or really even since. So cheers to that. On to the next one. And then we had a couple other comments here. And I covered the Sith Taker Open, that 140 person event. And it was a big conversation piece there that there was a rebel list in the top 16, which is important. But then also, this note matters as well that all of the other rebel lists scored significantly below that. Again, I already touched on the meta point, though, where so many players are coming with different backgrounds, different skill levels. So that's not necessarily something you can weight too heavily, which is frustrating because we always like being able to work with numbers, right? But I would not be discouraged from taking Rebels based just on that. But it is a reminder that you're looking at something that is almost certainly an uphill battle. I will admit that. Or that you should be experimenting with things you haven't seen yet. And you should be experimenting, you should be practicing for sure with your pieces. Okay, and then let's go ahead and take another quick touch on this. Let's see. It seemed pretty grim. So Strachan's last comments. You find your optimism repulsive. Yeah, it's fine. Uh, It seems here he's a little bit down on himself and Rebels. I don't know if that means he's decided not to take Rebels to Worlds. I hope he still takes Rebels to Worlds. I want to see it. I want to see Rebels take this thing, and I think they can. But let's talk about the headwinds the faction is facing. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about what Rebels are really good at, and we're going to touch on that more with some of the squad building that I've gone through as well. And I did again call some backup on that. But if we're looking at what's dominating the meta right now, this is the Sith Taker Open. We're looking at the very top ship, the top squad on the list. You've got a 8 ship, if I remember correctly. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Yep. So seven generic Obsidian Squadron pilots, the I3 ties, and the generic gauntlet with the crew that most notably allow them to get rerolls against targets that the gauntlet has locked. You've got massive board control. You've got tremendous durability because losing a TIE fighter doesn't really hurt the whole, and because each TIE fighter takes a lot of shots to hit. So, and then the gauntlet itself takes a lot to bring down as well. So you can take the gauntlet down, but you take so much attrition damage from the ties, that's a problem. You can take the ties down, but it takes so long to kill each one, and each one is worth so few points that you're losing the game as you do it. So this is challenging, especially because one of the things that rebels are really, really good at is jousting, is like throwing out massive amounts of torpedo damage against easy to hit targets. Where they really have struggled is against swarms, against spam. So like tie swarms are a problem for a lot of rebels. And we're going to touch on that in a little bit here too. But where Rob's list stands out as one that could potentially challenge that is it's so durable, having a two evade chunky pieces, a lot of defensive pieces, all of that token efficiency, the A-wing being hard to take down. The challenge is, though, it becomes very vulnerable to dice because a lot of that is defensive and hull modification, where you don't have all that much offensive modification aside from the token efficiency. So it doesn't have the punch that I want to see to really take this down because you need to burn those down quick. You need to be killing a tie per turn, more or less, once engagements have started. And if you're failing to take them down, especially if you're losing your ships, if the dice turn against you, as it were, that becomes an uphill battle real quick. So this has such good objective control, such good board control. That kind of archetype becomes a problem. And we see that archetype very, very common. You've got separatist swarms or separatist like mixed swarms. You've got the imperial swarms. You've got first order swarms all performing well. Even Scum and Republic both are doing some different variants of mini swarms. And while the overall squad sizes are on average lower, where you do see competitive three ship lists, still the average has actually gone up to five. So I think that five ship lists are kind of your minimum, and that's a squad size where rebels can kind of struggle, where you're giving up too many power pieces or you're compromising too much on the pieces you do have. And that's a big challenge. So the other piece that is coming up, and that actually is more of a problem too, because if we look at these imperial lists, we look at this one here, you're looking at Jendon, Soontir, Faroff, and Whisper. That's three ships that are really, actually, it's four ships that are really, really hard to pin down. Can take a beating and put out so much damage now. Like, this is a very frightening list for anything to go up against. But if you're thinking as rebels, you've got like a U-wing and some X-wings. They can take a hit. They're kind of brawlers, but not against this. Um, this is a whole page of kind of hard counters to your rebel meta lists. Kind of see like what we're coming from and what we're up against. The two kind of major archetypes that are succeeding right now is either the swarms or the semi-swarms, for the same reasons where you've got that board control, objective control, and if you lose a piece, it doesn't break your list. So you've got those ablative pieces, you've got those sacrificial pieces. That's a massive advantage in a points-based game that relies on dice luck, because that's insurance against dice luck. It's insurance against losing points in an awkward way. Like you're not losing one ship and then your list is done, right? And that typically is something that rebels have done a lot is they'll have one or two really expensive power pieces and then support ships. So if your power pieces go down, you don't have a win condition. And that's a big challenge to work through. That's something that every list struggles with, but rebels, both historically and now, really, really struggle with that. The other type of list that's doing well, and one that can work well against this, is your ultra points fortress. And that is your, like I mentioned, the three ship list is largely the scum list, like Boba lists with three large bases or medium, large, where each piece is so durable that they are able to prevent their opponent from getting any easy points. So any victory points from kill points becomes very challenging to tease out. And those lists can do very, very well. That's a place where rebels have a better win condition because rebels have that incredible punch I talked about, where rebel joust lists are historically the countered beef. So if you go up against a three ship scum list, a five ship rebel joust list should eat that for breakfast. Just nuke right through it with a bunch of torpedoes. But then the swarm lists will have the matchup of both. So we've got kind of this rock, paper, scissors going on that's pretty challenging to work through. And I haven't necessarily seen a lot of pieces built to kind of get around that. So we're going to scroll down here. This again is the Sith Taker Open, filtered by cut rank, and then also sorted by faction rank. So as we go down to Rebels, there we go. We got Sean Oakley, who was our 16th place, who made it into the top 16 with Rebels, and he had a four ship. So he's got Wedge. So he's got Wedge, custom with elusive plasma torpedoes R4 and servomotor S foils. So, and then we'll go into this. Rogue Squadron Escort, which is the generic U wing with proton torpedoes and R3. Oh no, excuse me, that is the E-wing. We talked about this one. That's the generic E-wing that has this really amazing threat ratio here. Benthic in the U-wing, who has that token passing. Interesting choice here. He's got Perceptive Co-Pilot and Magva, which is anytime he is hit, he can perform a free target lock action, which gives you the offensive mod on this ship that's generally doing a focus action, being a very heavy support ship. So that gives you focus lock if you're shot. But anyway, and then he's got Biggs with ion torpedoes, chopper, astromech, and servomotor S foils. Uh, so to talk through each piece here. So Wedge, of course, is your heavy hitter. He's got plasma torpedoes, shoots at I6, strips some shields. He's got the R4 to reduce the difficulty of those 1 and 2 speed moves, which gives the X-Wing a lot more flexibility in that 1 and 2 band to deal with stress, which is really good because then you can do your complex maneuvers more reliably. And that's an excellent upgrade for an Ace I6 X-Wing to open up the dial and give them a little bit more freedom to move around and benefit from being I6. Then we got the Rogue Squadron X-Score E-Wing, which can acquire locks beyond range 3. And then because R3, you can acquire 2 locks. So you have this thing, turn 1, you're just like, I'm going to lock 2 of your ships. So don't get close to me or they're going to get proton torpedoed. I love that tech, but the E-Wing is really expensive. And the reason you do that is to have the loadout for both proton torpedoes and R3. So that's why you take that instead of a named one. But the named ones are cheaper, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a really expensive piece. I really like it because if you're up against like a 5 ship that doesn't want to lose any of their key pieces, that's a genuine threat. Even up against TIE fighters, like that could reliably threaten 2 TIE fighters. Even if there's 7 of them, it still puts 2 of them very, very nervous, especially if you manage to hit one and take it down. And E-Wings are pretty good ships they're fast with a decent dial, so they can do pretty well at following up on that threat, especially backed up by the others. Then, of course, Benthic, we said hopeful, perceptive, co-pilot, Magva. I don't know if that's as strong as Jin. Magva makes more sense to give you the offensive output that helps spread the offense across this list. That's really smart because I was talking about offense being what's lacking in a lot of these rebel lists, especially the durability efficiency ones. You will see. And then, of course, Biggs for a little bit of extra defense. He is still an X-Wing, so still throws a 3-die gun, who's also backed up by Benthic's focus passing and coordinate. So it's good. It's very gutsy bringing a 4-ship list with that in there. So you can see how that would struggle to go up against some of the other stuff above that. You're looking at like a 6-ship, like this thing is just nasty. Um, you've got so many bodies out there that it negates your overall offense, and you're just one unlucky roll from taking some nasty crits on Wedge. If Wedge goes down, most of that list is gone. If you keep the Rogue Squadron fairly close and are able to jam off either of those locks, you nerf a lot of its offensive potential. Like this is a list you have to play really, really well, or it falls apart pretty quickly. Uh, Still, I mean, Sean obviously did very skilled pilot, so it's cool to see that. And what I'd love to see about that is the volume of experimental tech. I don't see any standard loadout cards. I see some interesting upgrade options. Like that's pretty cool. I really like that. And then I mean, you see it immediately drops to 58. So not even pre-cut day one. We're talking about 58, and this is a big event, so that's still not bad. But like people are saying, that's not top tier competitive. We got Battle over End Orlando. We got Battle over Endor. Yeah, no, Battle over End Orlando. Ezra, Chopper. Yeah, okay, your triple like, large base, which I believe that's 2 VCXs and a Falcon. Points Fortress, clever. You've got a lot of flexibility in Lando, but and these two here just throw out a ton of fire. That is really vulnerable to getting blocked, and it's very, very challenging to fly. So there's something here, especially because you've got the double. Oh, excuse me, that is the Gauntlet. So that's Falcon Gauntlet VCX. And Ezra Gauntlet's pretty darn good. So those have a ton of shots, and that's a 4 force Ezra, if I'm not mistaken, with the child crew on there. Um, so yeah, I'm sorry, that's Lando, Battle over Endor, Lando, Falcon, Ezra Gauntlet with Patience the Child, Contraband, Swivel Wing, and Night Brother. Chopper VCX with Fire Control System, Dorsal Turret, and Veteran Turret Gunner, which means that you can have a target lock and then you get the double tap from the Dorsal Turret and the Veteran Turret Gunner. I thought the title already gave you that, but it's there. it's an interesting list. And then we go down a little bit. I just want to kind of skim this and see who all is in here. Let's look at the bottom one. We've got Battle over Endor Wedge. I will say that one is really, really challenging. And I think I've talked about this before. That one's got those advanced proton torpedoes and the ability once per game to double mod your advanced proton torpedoes, which is awesome. But advanced proton torpedoes are a psychological trap. For me, I cannot fly a ship that has those because they make me fly like an idiot because I'm trying to do the thing the whole time and I'm not making choices. You have to bring that, assuming there's a chance that you could never actually fire those in the entire tournament. They make a great range control. People do not want to get in the range where those will hit them. So you can actually scare them just being like, you don't want to go there. But you shouldn't try too hard to commit to actually getting the attack. If you do, awesome. Especially if it's an 8 ship list, you're gonna get the shot off. But he's expensive. He's very expensive. Then we've got Hera A-Wing with elusive and swarm tactics and homing missiles. Interesting. And I say interesting because homing missiles are not that big of a threat. They are good if you're going up against like a Sunter Fel, where it's a 4 die attack. And people can either take the die roll or just take a damage. So if you're hitting an injured Sunter Fel, or just, ideally a Sunter Fel with 1 hull left, he's taking the die roll and you hope that you hit him. Then we got Benthic again. Benthic is a really, really, really common piece. And then you've got Sabine, A-Wing with Debris Gambit. I'd get a turret. I don't even know what Sabine that is. Is that Sabine Lancer? No. I don't even know what that is. That Sabine has the ion cannon turret on it. Weird. Is that Sabine VCX? Very strange. Anyway, that's a very strange list. There's a lot going on here. Then we got Corrin in the Xwing, I imagine, the T-65. Marksmanship, fire control system, and R2-D2, a little regen there. Then we've got Gavin with fire control system, proton torpedoes, and R4. Rogue Squadron Escort E-Wing again with elusive fire control system, advanced proton torpedoes, R4 astromech, and munitions failsafe. My God, that thing has a lot of loadout. Because it acquires long range target locks, I don't think advanced proton torpedoes really make sense on that thing. I really, really like the tech that we saw in Sean's that has the proton torpedoes and the R3. That's really genuinely great because you have a lot of opportunities to fire both. And if you're up against a smaller list, it's like a very frightening threat. Like if you're going up against another 4 or 5 ship list, very scary. Then we got a generic A-wing. Interesting. Okay. So an Isegi to Ketu is able to pass tokens, if I'm not mistaken. Multi-missile pods. Interesting. Gamera Sojin, Battle over Endor. Then we got Luke and Corrin. And this one speaks to some of the big issues with Rebels right now is a lot of the previous meta pieces got nerfed pretty hard. So most X-Wing versions of Wedge and X-Wing versions of Luke are really, really expensive right now. And I don't think they have a great spot in the current meta. I'm not totally sure they can be much cheaper because they are genuinely great. But I think a lot of the pieces that were built around them are also a little bit more expensive. So those pilots don't go off the rails. And I think there is room in this meta to dial them up a little bit and make them a little bit more scary, either through bodyguard pieces or through the ships themselves. But I'm not sure it's the moment to do that before Worlds. So those guys may stay on the shelf for a bit, but when you do see them see play, you don't see them succeed very much. If you think about it, a T-65, if you're going to run it, it better be very efficient. Because if you're going up against an 8 ship list, that is the last thing a 2 of 8 ship with 5 hit point wants to see. Or 6 if you're running one of the standard loadouts with extra hull, extra shield. Uh, but yeah, and then characters like, but that's, so we've got Segi K-Wing, Gemmer A-Wing. Yeah, that's like a very, very thin list. You've got the K-Wing, you've got Gemmer, who's very durable, you've got Luke, then you've got Corrin, I assume, in the X-Wing. Yeah, and I'm gonna miss some of these up. I don't want to take too long going through these, but I did want to look at the list. I'll look at some other ones as well. We've got Wedge over here with Swarm Tactics, Homing Torpedoes, R4, and Servomotor S foils, so that's custom Wedge again. We've got Lando Falcon with 9 Num and Bistan. So Bistan is still in the game. You can still run Bistan. And again, just to recap what Bistan does is after you perform an attack, if you still have a focus token, as in you are focused, you have an unspent focus token, You can perform a bonus attack from the same arc. Believe it's against the same target. You can shoot the same thing twice, which is insane. So that's why, as a gunner, he's really expensive now. But he's so expensive that even on Han Falcon, there's a limit to what else you can put with him. So the thing that I would really love to run is Bistan with Saw Crew, so that you can have your focus token and then just like mod the heck out of your focuses without spending your token. But that doesn't fit. Uh, so yeah, there's definitely something to work with there. With the squad sizes available now, I think Bistan is actually less good. I think veteran turret gunner is going to give you the same utility you used to. People went for Bistan because he was so good. Because in that meta, double tapping a key piece was really important. But now if you're going up against 6 and 7 ship lists, those key pieces are a little bit harder to pick out and harder to hit. So Bistan's less powerful and has been nerfed to heck. So I do think that your veteran turret gunner may be a better pick right now, especially because it's a fraction of the cost. Uh, but then we've got Marvel with Intimidation. Ooh. And then we've got Sabine with Clan Training and Optics, the A-Wing. So this is an interesting one. And then here we've got Janor's, who, if I'm not mistaken, it lets you roll extra attack dice. Janor's Hawk. Trick shot Lando crew, nice. Proton bombs, engine upgrade, and multi crow. So that's a very frightening hawk. Also a very expensive hawk. You've got Jake in the A-Wing with snapshot marksmanship and proton rockets. Jake who can pass off focus tokens to ships nearby him. And then we've got Wolfwaro in the Wookiee ship with Bo-Katan crew targeting butte and hull upgrade. We get Dutch Vander with ion cannon turret, ion torpedoes, R4, and concussion bombs. And that's another 4 ship list. And a couple things I mentioned before is if I'm up against a list like this one, the first thing I'm looking at is that hawk. Uh, well, I mean, so that's got a hawk and a Y wing and an A wing. Lucky shots will kill the Y wing or the A wing, excuse me. You could burn down the Y wing, and it's not like it can run away. And then the hawk, similar to the Y wing, you can burn it down. And it's not like it's going to run away. So there's some intimidating pieces about that, especially Wolfwaro. But you just don't shoot Wolfwaro. There's no way to trigger his damaged ability, and you just like nuke the stuff around him and take him down. Like I can see this being a really easy one to pick apart, and that is a real challenge. Where Jan, I would not take her because she's very expensive and very vulnerable. If you're going to take something like a Y Wing, you want it to be really efficient. So you want it to be something that contributes to your squad, but is dirt cheap because it's so vulnerable. You don't want to put all your points into something that can be and will be targeted and picked off. It's a very murdery meta right now, with kill points factoring higher than objective points, but also that meaning that you need to make sure you're bringing enough ships to contribute to objective points even as you start losing them. Let's see. We got Lando Battle over Endor. We got Corrin with Predator Fire Control System R2. That means it's the E-Wing, the tech slot. Then we got Miranda the K-Wing with Veteran Turret Gunner. Gonk. 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 Somebody brought Gonk. Laszlo, I think I saw that before, just like blanked on it. That's insane. The bomblet generator and delayed fuses. Now with bomblets, it kind of makes sense doing Gonk. You can just like go through the shields, and especially on top of Miranda's ability, like she can really regen a lot of shields that way, but I don't know. And then we got Zeb Tie. This is just that's a weird one. I do really like Lando in this one, especially because that coordinate ability he's got can help Miranda do actions while also gonking. Can't believe I said that. Um, let's see, we're getting pretty close here. I'm gonna go ahead and go. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and look through these. I'll talk through some of my lists as well. I don't want this video to get too speculative or too long, but I do want to make sure to highlight the competitive lists we have seen in play as a starting point for where we're going to go next. So next up, we've got Corrin with Predator Elusive Fire Control System R3. Again, the E-Wing. Corrin in the E-Wing is so expensive. He's good, but he's I5. Cost a fortune. And while he's the E-Wing is a weird substitute for the TIE Defender. It's kind of priced like it's a cheaper variant of the Defender, has a lot of the same things with just the like 3 stat line across the board. Doesn't have the white K-turn. It doesn't have a lot of the same things that make the TIE Defender so scary, but it also can't be too cheap because it has a lot of things that make the TIE Defender so scary. Then we've got Sabine with Lone Wolf, Leia, and Mandalorian optics. That is definitely not Sabine with a crew slot. I would be very curious to see what these Sabines are because that is probably the VCX again because that's not it's not the Then we've got Custom Wedge with Predator Plasma Torpedoes, R3 Astromech, and Servomotor S foils. And then Isegi Taketu again with Receptive Copilot Advanced Slam. Ooh, I love Advanced Slam. That's another interesting one. I do appreciate Big Sabine. Then we've got the Custom Wedge, definitely seems to be coming up a lot. And that's another challenge too, I haven't checked out here yet, is that whatever you bring is going to need to be able to handle I6 aces. You got to deal with swarms, which is a challenge. You got to deal with beef, points fortressing, which I think that rebels are particularly good at. And then you got to be able to deal with I6 aces. And if you have this kind of three pillar thing where your list has to be able to handle all three, especially good at two of the three, that's where rebels are really struggling because rebels are very good against points fortresses. They can melt down big ships like nobody's business. They're pretty good at that. They're less good at chasing down aces, and they're less good right now, on a lot of these at least, at dealing with swarms. Like none of these lists that I've seen so far have a really good answer to swarms. And in fact, a lot of them are sort of turned off by swarms. So again, that the really fun E-wing build that has the multiple target locks, like two proton torpedoes, you've now proton torpedoed two TIE fighters. Maybe you killed one. Good job. Um, really powerful tech that just doesn't work across the field and deal with everything you need to. And if you're doing a 2-day event and you need to get into the top cut, like it's very, very competitive. You have to have an answer for every single possible meta piece. And honestly, I don't really know what Rebels' best answer is against I6s. Um, it might be tractor, it might be bombs, it might be even something like Connor nets, but I don't think that Wedge is a good answer because he's so expensive and so vulnerable to so many other things in the meta. If you are looking at how to deal with swarms and just like pilot spam, I think that you're looking in your I5 bracket and you have cheaper options. I don't think that Wedge really contributes enough to be an actual I6 ace killer. I could be wrong. I was never very good at that. But just thinking about what an X-Wing is, even an Initiative 6 X-Wing, is not really an ace killer. And that's something to watch out for. So you may be better off looking for blocking and volume of attacks and durability in Rebels than you are looking at the I6 ace. Because I don't think I6 is where Rebels really succeed well. Let's see. And then on that note, we got Rebecca, the Pink Princess with Wedge, Predator Plasma Torpedoes, R3 and Servo Motors, Yendor, the X-Wing Battle over Endor X-Wing, Lando Battle over Endor, and then Zeb Tai. Now, I like that one. Yendor's pretty great. It's got a lot of stuff going on. Yendor has a lot of cool abilities and is relatively cheap for a standard loadout. You've got Wedge in there. And then you've got Lando Battle over Endor, which is a really good support piece. And then you still have the extra for Zeb. So that is four ship. It's still four ships though. The ship count is really challenging. Going into four, if you're gonna bring a power piece like a Falcon, you probably want to try to squeeze an extra body at least in there. Go for a five ship list with a Falcon. It's doable, but it's not easy. Let's see. Next up, we got Ben here going Hera with elusive proton cannons. Ooh, Hera B-Wing with elusive proton cannons, plasma torpedoes, stabilized S foils, B6 blade prototype, weapons systems officer. Love that because one thing Hera can do is pass up her target locks, and weapons systems officer allows her to spend the target lock and then reacquire it. So she can spend it to mod and then pass it to another ship. So if you're talking about a jouster that's just going to murder stuff, Hera B-Wing with weapons systems officer is a really good place to start. I believe it has to be a special weapon. I wonder about proton cannons. In a target-rich environment, they're really good because chances are you're going to get plenty of shots. But if you're up against a Imperial Aces list, four-ship Imperial Aces list, then it becomes much more challenging to use that even on the I6. Then we got Fen Rao with the child and targeting computer. That must be Fen Rao Sheathapede. Whoa. Okay, interesting, Ben. Then we got Nora Wexley with Intimidation Chopper, Veteran Tail Gunner, and a Blade of Plating, which I assume is the Y wing. Is it gunner slot? No. So that must be the Mark 170. Interesting. And we've got Tycho, Battle over Endor, and sorry, I don't love the. I think that the Battle over Endor Tycho is not the better build because of the action bar. Uh, because you get proton rockets, but it takes away the things that make rockets dangerous because he doesn't have the linked action into a focus. So he doesn't have reposition focus. He doesn't have a way to focus and reposition because he just has that taken off his bar, which I don't like that. So that is a huge demerit for me against Battle over Endor Tycho. I don't like it. And Fenrau the Child is just an interesting piece. It's double I6. Now, doing that with the double I6, especially with if you're gonna bring that Tycho, if you're gonna bring that Nora, it would be really helpful here to have swarm tactics on one of these guys. If you're bringing multiple I6s with talent slots, you should also be bringing swarm tactics to take something that's not an I6 and have it shoot an I6. That's a place where rebel I6s can succeed really well, is the joust, where they can hit really, really, really hard with swarm tactics and a couple lead pieces. Hera, especially again, is a dream candidate because she can fly with any wingmate out there with swarm tactics, with special weapons, and with that weapon systems officer. Mod the heck out of something, murder something, and then just pass that lock to the next, uh, to that wingmate to either hit it again or hit something else. Which, of course, if the thing you have target locked, anyway, assuming the locked target isn't dead, like then it's still a really handy ability. But the swarm tactics is good either way. And then next up, we're looking at Ezra Bridger in the Gauntlet with Clan Ren Commandos, Chewbacca Crew, Contraband, Dropsy Base, Swivel Ring, Night Brother. Then we got Fen Rao Fang with Clan Training, Marksmanship, Homing Torpedoes, and Mandalorian Optics. Sabine Wren with Clan Training Optics, so Sabine A-Wing, and then Hera A-Wing with Swarm Tactics, Elusive, and Homing Missiles. That's a good one too. The Elusive Swarm Tactics Hera A-Wing is also a really excellent piece. Very durable, very fast, has the Swarm Tactics to swarm things up. Uh, but then also has that elusive to stay alive and is that I6. So you can give any other things in your I6. Assume that was probably Ezra, maybe Sabine, but probably Ezra. So you're looking at a pretty good output here. My real hang up with Fangs is always going to be the durability. These are ships that love, 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 love high risk play. Fang fighters are not aces, they are jousters. They have ace durability with jouster instincts. So they are really cool, interesting thematic ships. They have a very high ceiling where they can hit very hard. But if you're doing a multi-day event, if you look at just like Fang fighters across the board, they are like a 50-50. They're a die roll. So they're not consistent enough to ride them all the way to the finals. Sometimes you'll get close. We've seen them get very, very close. We've even seen them win sometimes, but that was usually because the Fangs themselves were not the like key piece of the list. They were there, they contributed, but they weren't the like dominant piece. Anytime you bring a Fang fighter, build it into your list in a way where losing it doesn't hurt you a lot. So Fen is a really risky play. Even Rebel Fen that's a little bit cheaper, who's also a little bit less durable than the maybe Scum one. Okay. Then we've got Craig. Almost done here with these. Yeah, almost done. Craig. We've got Yendor again. Yendor, Battle over Endor, T65. We got Gina Moonsong Custom. Nice. Gina with Predator, Fire Control System, Proton Cannon, Stabilized S foils. Gina Custom B-Wing Gina is also pretty good. Being the I5, she's quite cheap, not being the standard loadout version. So we got 10 Num, Fire Control System, Ion Cannon, Stabilized S foils. Hall Oakend, nice. Y-Wing with that is confusing though. That's custom Hull Oakend. So you're bringing Hull with advanced proton torpedoes. I don't understand why you wouldn't bring the standard loadout. Well, it's probably notably more expensive, so it probably means you can't take the tie. This is an interesting one because it's one, two, three, four, five ships. You have an objective runner. You have two B-wings capable of shooting twice. You have the threat of the advanced proton torpedoes, and you've got Yendor in there. It's a nice efficiency piece. That is one I would look at to tweak because that's a really good model. Five ships, objective runner, double tapping B wings, with 10, of course, being one who can mod his attacks as well. Um, Pretty good, but my problems with that are Ion Cannon doesn't give you enough offensive output. It has the control, which is good, but you need to be able to burn through swarms, and I think Ion Cannons will hold you back in this. Hull, I think, is just too vulnerable, and the advanced proton torpedoes don't necessarily make sense here. But if you're looking at that, I would look at that list, look at kind of very vaguely the role of each and the points realm that they're in, and look at what else you could slot into these places in that points level. Because that's very similar to kind of the archetype that I'm building, somewhere between a jouster, a objective piece, and just a very durable Swiss Army knife of a list. I love it. Next up, we've got Rick, and I believe we have just three more here, and then we'll talk in a little bit more about some others. Rick has Wedge with Elusive Plasma Torpedoes R4 and Servo Motor S foils. Kanan with, and this is, I believe, VCX, yeah. Kanan with Heightened Perception, Dorsal Turret, Magma, Leia, and Ghost. Biggs with Ion Torpedoes, Chopper, Servo Motor S foils, and then Zeb again. Zeb and the Phantom. So Zeb with Lando Crew, R4 Astromech, and the Phantom title. This one is interesting because Kanan himself is, of course, a force carrying VCX with a good initiative, and with height perception means he shoots at I7. Really good start. And then also Magva Yarrow, potentially not the best upgrade here because Magva is after you defend. So you'll have target locks for follow up turns, but I think that's better on lower initiative pilots because that discourages people from shooting you and encourages and gives you an advantage when you shoot back. I like the idea, but I think I would look for another way to get mods other than Magma personally. Um, Although I mean, it's still good. I would consider Saw Crew personally again. Even though he bleeds damage, just having a free focus mod is so good and frees up Kanan's force to use his ability and do more defense. And then, of course, Biggs helps with that defense too. Like, Biggs is still really good. Biggs T65 is also not to underestimate. I'm curious about that Phantom and how else this could have been built. Like, if you were to take that and you swap out Wedge and you swap out Zeb Phantom, you probably have the points to squeeze in three ships because Zeb and the Phantom is on the pricier side for a cheap ship, and then Wedge is very expensive. So if you take the two of them out, I bet you could make this a five ship and make it just annoyingly durable. Between Biggs and Kanan, that's so much defensive tech in just those two pilots, plus one of them being a VCX and the other one being a middling Xwing. You can really make something stupid durable out of that. And also have really good offense because the VCX's offense is really strong. And if you ramp that up elsewhere, it could be really good. So, like, swap Wedge for a more efficient B Wing. Double tapping B Wing could be really, really strong. And then see if you can fit two ships instead of Zeb. I would be curious to see how that would work. All right, then we're very close here. Then we got Michael Fenner with the Mandalorian Resistance Pilot, which is the generic gauntlet. With Clan Training, Jin Urso, Magva, Yarrow, Perceptor, Co-Pilot, Dropsy Base, Swivel Wing, Night Brother. That's an excellent case for Magva because it's a big ship people are going to shoot at low initiative, so you have more opportunities to get those locks. You've got Chewbacca with Luke Skywalker, engine upgrade, Millennium Falcon. Chewbacca with Luke Skywalker, I assume that's Gunner. Ooh, gnarly. This is an interesting take. And then Hera with Hopeful Fire Control System, Dorsal Turret, 9 Numb, Ezra Bridger, and the Ghost. So that is Hera VCX. Um, that is another one where I would have really tried to get Swarm Tactics in there because Chewie with Swarm Tactics could have been really, really good. Maybe in Mando Resistance Pilot, depending on the round. Like being able to share that I6 is really good. This is a points fortress list, and you see how much higher this performed than the others, just because of how being chunky like that. Like if we had a Rebel Swarm in here, it may also perform better than some of the others because just the number of bodies is really helpful. The one swarm I've seen is what? It's Sabine A-Wing with thread tracers, and then nothing but Z95 pilots. Which probably isn't going to perform that well, but it would probably perform above quite a few of the ones we've looked at so far. That is interesting. There's definitely space for Rebel 3 ship meta to thrive, especially if they have crew and pilot abilities that support each other. Like a Kanan in there to improve the defense of everyone else, like a Kanan with the child, for example, that is able to use a ton of force to go ahead and reduce the amount of incoming damage your other ships are taking and make sure that people want to shoot at that as well. Super good. That would be great. I want to say you can take a Kanan Mando. I think you can take Mando if you also have the child, but I don't remember for sure. We can look at that. And then we got Marson Maisek with the Rogue Squadron Escort. Again, that E-Wing with Hopeful Approach and Torpedoes R4. So that's improves the dial. Takes away some of the tech utility that Sean used, but it's there. And then we've got Dutch Vander with Hopeful Approach and Torpedoes R3. Love the double lock on that one. We've got Wedge with Elusive Plasma Torpedoes R4, and then Fen Rao with K2SO and R4. So that's the Sheathipede, so the I6 coordinate Sheathipede. Really powerful tech. If you're going to run a low ship count, It's hard to overstate the power of an I6 coordinate in that, especially with K2SO has got kind of the passive coordinate as well. Like that's really good. Um, yeah, very, very good. If you use synced cannons in your list, so if you have B wings that have synced cannons, especially if they're double tackers, K2SO is incredibly good there because he is a option to pass over calculate tokens to those ships. So if they fire the synced cannons, they can then reliably remove range bonuses, which is especially good because the B wings also can attack multiple times. So just remember that one too. And then we've got Martin Ward was our last one. We've got that. I know may already have covered this one, hopefully not. But this one we're looking at Lando Battle over Endor. We've got Ezra Gauntlet, and then we've got Chopper VCX. Yes, we have looked at this one before. Also, the classic Points Fortress list also performed very well. So there is something to be said right now for Rebel Points Fortresses. So that is definitely something to explore and something I'll look into as well. But I've got a couple other things I did build. Not that one. Look at this one. I made a couple kind of strange points fortress lists. This is a bit of a weird one. So I was looking at if you're gonna make a points fortress that's gonna stand up to swarms, you do need some ability to double tap. So Battle over Endor Lando is a good choice to start with because he gives you the option to double tap. It's pretty great. This is an interesting one. I went in looking at Dash, assuming that he could double tap, but he can't. But he does throw 4 dice in a bow tie. So he doesn't have a gunner slot. So I didn't find a way to give him an additional attack. But with Trickshot Saw, if you are getting target locks, so he's got thread tracers on there, but if you run Dash with a support ship, so if you have Dash with, say, Fen Rao, if you have Dash with a Hera or a Fen that can give him target locks and Saw shooting through a rock, you're throwing 5 dice with a double mod, reliably on a double mod with that ship. And it's a quick ship, it's durable, it's able to run around a bit. It's got the 2 green dice, or the 2 evade dice, that you don't get in most large rebel ships. I didn't see any outriders in any of those lists at all. I don't know if people are trying it. I don't know if it's too expensive. Dash at 20 is definitely pricey. If you were to look at something like a Dash Han squad, you could do that, but that's 40 points between the two of them together. So it's a little bit challenging to do that. What was interesting to me though is if you have a 20 squad quest pilot, that does give you 30 still. So you can have two 15-point pilots as well. So you've got two, and this is funny, in Launch Bay next to the Night Brother is standardized, so I couldn't give it to one and not the other one, which it doesn't like. There you've got those I2 Mandalorian Resistant Pilot gauntlets. This is a gnarly points fortress. So good durability, passable speed, you've got 3 ships that all have 2 evade dice and a bunch of hit points, and then you have the option for just like every single possible support rebel crew out there because each of these has 20 loadout. Each gauntlet has the option for the extra crew slot, so you can really load these suckers up. You can put crew in there, but I really, or excuse me, you can put a gunner in there, but I really think that crew that supports the entire squad is the way to go. This was interesting. This is one of the first things I built, saying like, can I build a true points fortress three ship list? And I think I did another one too. Yeah, so I opted for this one as well. And for this one, I tried to do something a little bit more, and I think I've tweaked this a little bit. So then you've got Dash Han, and then I threw Jake in there as a 10 cost that can go ahead and pass over tokens. Like he's, pretty good. Um, and what's crazy about this is, yeah, so Jake could do an action, then uses vector thrusters to boost or yeah, then use vector thrusters to boost, and then because he boosted, he can give a focus action to another ship. So he's a really good. He's only I4. It doesn't have a ton of options for offense, but this I think is actually the standard loadout. So I couldn't even change that. I think this is starter pack Jake. So he's good, but I don't think you can do custom Jake because I think he was too expensive. I don't think this is as strong as the first one. It still has potential, especially with a different loadout on Han. Uh, let's see here. We're looking at 10 and Jake. Yeah, okay. So the custom Jake is 11, so that wouldn't fit. But you can tweak this a bit and take out either Han or Dash and make something a little bit more kind of support oriented. having 30 points left to spend with a 20-point pilot was pretty eye-opening to me because you could really make some changes to this and do some pretty impressive stuff. So let's say, for example, we drop Han. Well, we'll come back to this. I got a lot to cover. Okay, so a couple pieces of tech that I've been building with that I personally really, really like, and I cannot say these are competitive, but these are pieces that I personally really enjoy. Top of mind is Saw. And this is something I talk about a lot, is like one of the things that I am really big about is I start by looking at the utility pieces that I wish I had in other factions. So coming to Rebels as somebody that's played several other factions more heavily, I immediately reach for Saw. I'm like, my God, why don't I have that elsewhere? Because both Saw Pilot and Saw Crew are really, really strong. Where Saw Crew is whenever you roll attack dice, uh, you may take one damage, suffer one damage to change all of your eyeball results to crits. To crits. Like, yes, you're self-damaging, but if you're on something like a VCX, like that is a minor. Especially if you're an Agent Callus with a reinforce, you've got locks from somewhere. Like you are able to absorb insane volumes of damage, and then also if you have a free focus mod on your attacks, and doubly better if you have a way to actually do multiple attacks, which I believe he can take Bistan. It's pretty good. So I really, really like that. And then Saw Pilot is one that's interesting because his ability is right here. While a damaged friendly ship at range 0 to 3 performs an attack, it may reroll one attack die. That seems super, super strong, and I immediately went to that, thinking about ships with a ton of hull, like B-Wings, and especially ships that have multiple attacks, like B-Wing. So if you have B-Wings, and it doesn't say primary attack, it's any attack. So as your ships are taking damage throughout the game, they gain offensive power, which is super good. Um, if you want to gimmick that, you can put a Y-Wing somewhere back there that has proton bombs. That way you can proton bomb your whole squad and put a card under shields. So then they get the Saw reroll before any of them actually get damaged. So before any of them have even lost their shields. I wouldn't do that with A-Wings, but it's there. Um, and this was a fun list too, because this was actually one of the first ones I built. Goes around Sabine because she's incredibly efficient. Like a Sabine A-Wing at the being 8 points, like she is super good. 8 points in the 50-point meta is really, really, really cheap. And with an A-Wing with a bunch of passive mods, get it out of town. She's incredible. Uh, so these two are pieces I reach for a lot. Just kind of figure out like Saw is so good for supporting a squad. Sabine is just so good to fill it. So you can do a lot with that. If you're reaching for a 13-point wedge, I would strongly consider reaching for a support ship instead and trying to fill in your damage elsewhere. Arvel is the one that doesn't really make sense here. And then Garvin, and Arvel's only in here because he's the other 8-point A-Wing, which is also good. Uh, and I believe that that's starter pack Arvel, but yeah, pretty good. So he can fail a boost and still form the boost, so it doesn't leave him back where he was, so he can still move a bit. I do like Arvel. He's also I3. Um, so he and Sabine do fly well together in a squad, but it does take a lot out of your squad at that point. And then Garvin is one I like, but so his ability reads after you spend a focus token, you may choose one friendly ship in range 1 to 3. That ship gains one focus token. What I need to tweak a little bit there is I need to see if there are any ways for you to spend a focus token on purpose, even if you don't spend it for an attack. Because that wording is key. If you roll all hits or all blanks, you will not be spending your focus token unless you also have a lock. So he's good at passing tokens around as long as he's also spending them. And that's something that I forget a lot, but a commenter on YouTube called out and reminded me that like that's where he really holds you down. So I built this and I have rebuilt it since, but I did also want to call out Leave Intensa. Leave Intensa is a 10-point T65. Granted, only I3, but a 10-point T65 is a really good efficiency piece if you're looking to shave points in your squad to keep ships, to keep your power pieces. Still a 3 attack ship. Very good. And one thing I really love about Levin is that ability. After you perform a barrel roll or boost, you may perform a red evade action, which is a natural candidate for Juke. So drop Juke on there, you've got a 10-point Xwing that's really hard to deal with because it's just evading all over the place and getting an offensive mod for that. Probably benefiting from other stuff in your squad. Where like Levin and Saw Pilot are really good together because Levin's so efficient dies really slowly and gets the free and is reliably evading, plus also consistently getting the offensive mod once it starts bleeding calm. Yeah, so there are definitely some pieces that have stood out. Let's get on there. What's the next one? And we'll get to some that Ollie actually sent me soon, so we don't just have to learn about my weird crap over here. I did build a ton of lists. I've been list building like crazy, and I've had a lot of fun with it. And one thing that I personally really enjoy strategically, especially if you're up against large squads, one thing that can be incredibly helpful for consistency, giving you more options, more different ways to interact with the game, is having your squad be the same initiative. So everyone in this is initiative 5 except the last one. And I can probably tweak it to get all four of them in there. Uh, but there are two things I don't love about this. Number one, I don't love that I have an I4 Y-Wing in here. Um, I think I can get another I5 in there. Number two, I don't like having Kraken in there because a Z95 is a Z95. Number three, I think Gina's a little bit too expensive. So I would tweak things around. I might add some extra X-Wings. I probably would drop Tycho because, yeah, I don't know. It's just an 11-point A-Wing is a lot when you have two 8-point A-Wings that I think are generally better. They're not I5, they don't have proton rockets, but for being that much cheaper for the same chassis is still definitely worth considering. But Kraken's pretty good at I5. He says after you perform an attack, you may choose one friendly ship in range one. That ship may perform an action treating it as red. Wild action economy, especially if you give him. I don't think it actually works. I believe cluster missile still counts as a single attack, but he could also potentially have snapshot. So if you give Kraken with snapshot in the middle of your list, he's potentially giving your squad two actions per turn. Just they have it there. They're just coordinating that. And especially with snapshot, he could be giving them a red action before they maneuver. So you have the option. You can choose if you're going to do it, but that gives you a responsive action after your opponent has started maneuvering. Like that's pretty darn good. So he's a Z95, which but he's an 8-point Z95. And if you start looking at all the 8-pointers I brought in here, there's a lot of potential to do a really high efficiency rebel list that's a bunch of janky 8-pointers just running around doing stuff. Um, and then, of course, Gina is pretty good. Uh, she's got that bit of a downside where you can stress your own ships when you don't want to. But there's that. This list I don't like very much. This is just kind of tweaking with pieces to seeing what I could do with the I5s. And honestly, I don't think custom Gina is a great call. I think there are better calls around there. You do lose out on the I5 if you do the other picks, but yeah, we'll look at those two. Appears to be blank. Let's see. Let's see if I have Rebel. Let's see if I have another. Let me load another Rebel squadron. I did do another one. Did. There's another Points Fortress. I did do another I5. Let's look at this one, then I'll load another one. This I don't think is good either because Soka is a 12-point A-Wing, and I just discussed not wanting to do an 11-point A-Wing. Now she's insanely powerful, but that is such a gamble. You would pretty much have to just completely blanket her with defensive mods and then hope that your entire strategy with her was having your opponent try to take her down. And your whole job is to keep her alive while all your other squad does all the work. Yeah. And then Wes Jansen, his ability is insane. Just being able to jam ships that you shoot. Also really, really good. Um, just genuinely great. And I'm tempted to put Snapshot on him, but that doesn't give you as much control of it. So he's interesting and he's really good being at the same initiative as everything else because he can choose whether he wants to shoot and jam something before someone else shoots it or not. So I really love that. Yeah, I love Wes Jensen. I do think he's a little bit too expensive to consider, but I did kind of build this. This was a more interesting like utility piece list where I was trying to figure out what would work well against some of those I6s out there. And I don't know if I got there, but I like this I5 one a lot better than the other one, even though I don't think it's a very competitive list because it's just way too thin. Uh, let's see what else we got. There's a bunch of stuff I looked at. Rebels. Oh yeah, yeah. Look at this one. This is a fun one. And then I'll get to Ollie's in a minute here. But let's see. Okay. So this is a four-ship Rebels list, and it also happened to mostly be Rebels from the show Rebels, which is fun. But we've got Kanan there in the VCX, and I've got him with Bistan, so he does have the option to double attack. As Bistan reads. So Bistan says, after you perform a primary attack, if you are focused, you may perform a bonus turret attack against a ship you have not already attacked this round. And that wording is somewhat funny because I'm pretty sure oh, it's same arc. So it has to be a ship you haven't shot at before, but it can be the same arc. So if your turret is pointed forward, you do primary attack with your forward arc, and then you have that turret attack against another ship. So you can attack multiple, like if you have a TIE swarm coming at you, they're all on your front arc. That's the advantage of that over veteran turret gunner or veteran tail gunner because those have to be a different arc. So you have to be kind of in the middle of stuff to benefit from that. Whereas Bistan lets you go from that jousting safety approach and still hit multiple ships. Okay, there was that. So having that with the dorsal turret and the ghost, I think you have to actually have a docked. Yeah. Well, so there, the dorsal turret Bistan combo is actually pretty good. Yeah, so it's the dorsal turret, so it's only two dice. Um, but it's still good, especially on something like that. You're going to end up in the face of things a lot. So pretty good. And then Kanan has that classic ability where you can spend a force to reduce the number of attack dice being thrown at your defender. I think that I still like the child on there better than Bistan. The child is nine. Ooh, God, expensive in Rebels. And then can I put Mando on here? Does it let me do that? It looks like no. Okay. So the downside of the child is you have four force, but then it's not recurring anymore unless you take shots. Now, chances are you're going to get shot at, so you'll get your force back. But the thing is, that gives opponents a lot less reason to shoot at him, especially because of Kanan's ability, which can be good. But question. All right. And then we've got Hera A-Wing, and I've got her with swarm tactics, of course, and then proton rockets and hopeful. That she can take swarm tactics and proton rockets speaks highly of her loadout. And hopeful, of course, is helpful. Then we got Sabine, and then we got Kyle over here. Start of engagement phase, you may transfer one of your focus tokens to a friendly ship in your firing arc. Of course, really, really good because it's got the Moldy Crow title, so you've got a pretty big arc. And then you can put Jin in there, so that can be an evade token instead. But you could put Jin in there. I put Perceptive Copilot in there. Yeah. All right. What else we got? And some of these I'm not giving too much credence. I'm talking about the pieces, but the overall list I don't really love. And that's something I wanted to be sure to highlight. So this is my third points fortress. I've got Battle over Endor Lando because I really like him, and he's 18 points. 18 points for that is really good. Again, if you're talking efficiency. Then I've got Han with Veteran Turret Gunner, with Agile Gunner and Hera Crew. Um, Agile Gunner is really good. I still think this is probably better with Saw Crew. Let me see if that fit. Let's see why I didn't do that. Because man, I really, really like Saw Crew, especially with the number of rerolls that. Yeah, that fits. And I think actually I still have Agile Gunner. Yeah. Ooh, no, Agile Gunner is too much. So I like Agile Gunner on there. I don't think you need it that much. So Saw and Veteran Turret Gunner with Han is really strong because Han has the free reroll. So you can mulligan your dice, and then you have a free focus mod if you need it. Now, ideally, you have a way to benefit from taking damage as well, or a way to repair damage, both of which are kind of missing here. But for the damage output you can do with a double tapping Falcon with a free focus mod at I6, I think it's worth bleeding some hit points here and there, because it's also not a must, it's a may. You can use it when you have a really good roll, but you don't have to. I love the utility of that. You get that range one shot. Um, Yeah, say you get that range one shot. Say, for example, you have trick shot on here as well, if you're able to fit that in. Oh, he does have trick shot. Yeah. So the way Han works getting his reroll, he likes playing around rocks anyway, so your chances of getting trick shot shots are really, really high. And if you manage to pull off an I1 trick shot roll, like having that free focus mod will probably kill ships, multiple ships, like high hit point ships. You can kill defenders that way. not on a single hit, but still. It's really hard hitting, and I really like this Han build. I still would like to build around that with some other stuff that helps support it, and go on efficiency as well. But this is a ship that people will want to shoot at. And then you can have Boudica in there to help do those bonus shots. Boudica still being 12 points. That's another thing too with Fangs. With all the problems I have with their reliability and consistency, they're also very expensive. Uh, and I get why, but at the same time, that really holds them back in my estimation for what they can be. Like they really should comparable to Xwings, less some. I'm a little bit surprised that they end up so high. Uh, and Boudica does, in her defense, have a lot of loadout value. So you can really trick that thing out. And then Predator there with the double attacks is nice as well. So all three of these ships have the potential to shoot multiple times. Han just has these absolute haymaker shots. Boudica discourages people from shooting the other two. Not great at objectives, but Lando's coordinate abilities, like there's a lot you can do with Lando. And also you've got the I5 and I6, but that Han just hits like an absolute truck and is a really good way to reliably take out some of those scary, spammy ties. So they had better kill you real quick, or they're going to start losing ships really fast. So this is a proper murder list. And Han is one of the better choices to deal with I6 aces. Being I6 himself, having the wide arc, having a bunch of mods, he can be very good at taking down aces, especially with that trick shot saw combo. They don't want to take any shots from that. Just because the risk is way too high. Like having a fistful of crits, having what is that, 5 crits thrown at them, the absolute max. I won through a rock, all critical or focus results. I mean, the average is going to be more like 3 hits plus, but it still is not something any ace wants to take, especially if there's a bunch of crits in there. Also, in scenarios, that makes it really strong in crits in salvage because you have a reliable way to drop crits. I like this list a lot. I especially like this Han a lot. Let's see. I think I have one more, and then I'll go ahead and get to Ollie's, and hopefully this hasn't gotten too long. I have not checked the clock. That may actually be it. That's covered all of my weird crap. So we'll go ahead and keep going. Set that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now we're looking at some of the stuff that Ollie Pocknell, my dear friend Ollie Pocknell, passed over as a quiet advocate of rebels who hasn't been taking. I haven't seen him being too involved in the debates, but has been talking up some of the things in rebels that are extra good. This is just an efficiency build. We're just taking pieces that get bonus attacks that have extra defense and are really good with tokens. I did mean to check this. What does Ivan's ability do? Yeah, okay. So you've got a B-Wing, you got the Fang Fighter that does bonus attacks and defense. The B-Wings pretty much all have the option to shoot cannons twice. I already talked about proton cannons. I think I personally would switch that to synced cannons, but it's there. That damage output is nothing to sneeze at. And wonder, synced cannons are 8. So the loadout becomes a problem. So having selfless in here is good. Interesting. So you've got bigs and selfless to keep your ships alive, which is really good. You've got bonus shots on the proton cannons. So let's see. Uh, After you perform an attack, you may spend your lock on the defender to perform a bonus cannon attack that ship using a cannon upgrade unit. Yeah, so you get your 3-die primary. Spend your target lock to shoot them again. Uh, which is really good. So you do have to have target locks. So you want ways to gain those target locks, which I believe. So I get Yvonne in here. No, Yvonne gives you extra defense dice. So these are efficient because there are a couple of ways to get bonus shots in here, both Bodica and the B-Wing stabilized S foils. Then you've got an ion cannon turret, and then you've got Dutch, who says after you perform a target lock action, you may choose one friendly ship in range 1 to 3. That ship may acquire a lock on the object you locked, ignoring range restrictions. At 9 points, that is an excellent Y-Wing to have with your B-Wings because he's really, really good at empowering that stabilized S foils. And double tapping B-Wings are a very strong piece of tech in the current meta. especially because they are that three attack base already, and then they also have the option to add additional attacks on there. Like that's a good combo. Uh, yeah, good stuff. All right, let's look at the next one. And this is where things get a little bit weird. So this is where we're talking about ordnance tech. So you've got Harrison Dula in there in the B wing, and she's got that. She's got proton torpedoes, and she does not have ordnance tech in there because she has proton torpedoes. That's a tricky one. So you've got Wedge and you've got Hera, both I6, and then you have swarm tactics on Hera to go ahead and swarm up Dutch for his advanced proton torpedoes. So it's a very, very aggressive advanced proton torpedo. Being able to do that at I6 is very good. And then you've got Jake to go ahead and pass around the focus tokens. So all of these guys can focus on target locking so that Jake can then give them the focus so they get those double mods. This is really thin. You better be landing those hits and really getting those kills. But, and I don't love that either because Hera doesn't have the weapon systems tag to share locks or the cannon to benefit from the double tap. It is proton torpedoes at I6, which is of course very good. Um, it's certainly worth considering. Like this is the kind of list I've never been good at building. I've often lost to Rebel ordnance tech, but I've not ever been able to build it myself. But I wanted to go ahead and share this. There's a lot of efficiency here, a lot of stuff going around, and a lot of ways to share buffs between these ships. But really, the way I see this being is a tight little knot that just like murders something on a flank and then chases stuff around. The double I6 is very, very powerful here. If you go up against a bunch of I5s, you have potentially triple I6 and the opportunity to kill up to three ships before they have a chance to react. Especially with the combination of advanced proton and plasma torpedoes, Wedge could shoot first, and then your swarmed up Dutch could shoot second. You take the free shield off, and then advanced proton torpedo that and hit it with a crit. Like that is really devastating damage if you're able to line that up. Dutch, of course, being a I4. Yeah, I4 Y wing though. That's a thing. And then Hera, of course, being a B wing. You kind of do want to fly these in overlapping fields, and if there are a bunch of aces around there, this could have some problems. This one worries me. This is just straight up spam. This is a six ship. This is a six ship list. I want you to be sure to cover that. And now I do have mixed feelings about this though, because I think that I already talked about this. I think a major advantage of this is going to be your synced laser cannons, especially if you're trying to take down points fortresses, if you're trying to take down tie swarms. I think that the Blue Squadron pilot with just synced lasers is a really good piece. I have a couple lists that I built that I don't remember seeing that have two of those in them. So the 10-point ones, and then a coordinator that is good, like a AP5 crew carrier that's good at giving them the calculate so they get the range bonuses denied. Uh, and that's good. But I will say an advantage of the ion cannon in two of these. So the fire control system ion cannon means that they get a free reroll on both shots if they have a target lock on the defender. Uh, they don't get a reroll on both shots. No, there we go. Yeah, okay. So the S foils, they have to spend the lock. Yeah, so you do the primary attack, then you spend the lock, form a bonus cannon attack. Yeah, okay. Um, but still, you've got three B wings here that are shooting twice each, assuming they have a target lock. And so you've got the thread tracers in the first one, can drop the thread tracers, and then can perform the bonus attack with the tractor beam afterwards. So you lock, you thread tracers, you tractor beam. Uh, and then the other two B wings can primary fire and then ion cannon that thing. Like that is, it adds up. Uh, I really do think that ion cannons reduce your damage output so much that even though the utility is good, I wonder about if that's enough actual damage. But on a 10-point B wing, like that's pretty darn good. But looking at those, the 10-point Blade Squadron veterans, I would still really like I don't think the fire control systems do anything. I think they're still better with synced cannons and saw pilot, and then something in there that can drop a bomb to go ahead and prime them to get the rerolls in both shots. So they can do a primary attack and a synced cannon shot and get a single reroll on both, even if they're spending their target lock on both. Like that's, or even if they're spending their target lock on their bonus attack. And that's, yeah, that is better than fire control system, and you get a U-wing in there. This is still really good. I mean, these starboard slash A wings are reducing. Yeah, they're putting strain tokens and stuff out there, running around getting objectives. Like that's pretty nasty. And then you've got a cluster missiles bandit squadron in there too, who could be getting a lock from your thread tracers. Bandit squadron is I1. Blue squadrons are I2. Now, obviously, these guys are not going to be shooting anyone first, so that's a big concern, especially if they're getting jammed from those attacks or if they're taking a bunch of damage. But this is so much hull and so many hit points. I certainly see the value here. And Ollie specifically called out that I think I mentioned this, the ship can thread tracer and then also tractor beam at I2, so then everything else shoots after that, and you can just like murder that thing. Assuming you hit it with the thread tracers or the tractor beam. So there's that. Yeah, so this kind of efficiency is stuff that I have not seen, that is stuff that Rebels can do. Looking at some of those lists we saw early on, let's see, this is fun. Yeah, looking at some of these, again, we're looking at all these four ship lists. If you were able to shave these down, like take 2 to 3 points off the cost of every single pilot, add another ship or two, you could make some of these lists do similar things, but be far scarier just for having the extra body. And especially if they have overlapping stuff going on helping them out. What I haven't seen too much of is a ton of is like synergy between the different pieces. Like a lot of these have individual strong pieces. They'll pass a focus token here and there. They have ways to pass locks, but they don't have like passive moments, right? So again, that saw pilot piece is one that keeps jumping up. Is like you get rerolls in your entire squad the whole game once they're damaged, but it's always there. And if you're doing multiple attacks per round, every single time you get a reroll just compounds and is even more value. Uh, a couple other pilots that haven't come up that I do want to go ahead and talk about. One of my personal favorites. How do I remove this? Is the U-wing, and I so looking at the U-wing points, Body Rook gives you long range target locks, which is very, very good. Okay, so let's actually talk about each of these. Uh, and I did, let's see. So Benthic comes up a lot. He's one that came up before. So he says, after you perform a focus action, you may transfer one of your focus tokens to a friendly ship at range 1 to 2, which is not great if you only have one, but that's where you take Perceptive Copilot. So you get a focus and then you give somebody else another one, plus Jin to potentially make it an evade. Like, I see why he's good, but he's 12 points and he's a one trick pony. Everyone knows what he does. He's not getting a lot of offensive potential there. Like, eh. Uh, and then we've got K2 gets free focus tokens, who is also 11. So there, right there, there's opportunity to get a better initiative, shave a whole squad point off, and then just load him up with support crew that can do similar things to passing the tokens, but in a more efficient way. So people won't be expecting that. Then we got Cassian. Oh, just like take stress tokens off. I mean, there's some great abilities here. Magma Yoro Pilot is so good, especially against those tie swarms or against offensive stuff. Like this is a pilot that cannot be underestimated. You never see her, but it's when a friendly ship or intruder to defends, the attacker cannot reroll more than one attack die. If you're looking for a consistent defensive bubble that is always up, Magva's crazy. So like if you have Magva and Kanan in a squad, you will frustrate the crap out of your opponents. Where it's like you get one fewer die and you can't like reroll your full lock. Okay, so she's expensive too. So I don't know that I'd necessarily recommend her in most squads. But if you're running a lean like 4 ship squad, she's really strong to have a protective passive bubble. Doesn't matter what else crew she's got. Doesn't matter what action she took. It's always, always, always there. You prevent people from mulliganing their dice. If you're up against a Bistan Han, that sucker does not get to reroll all his dice. Well, I guess it's, I believe what it is. Yeah, so he can still do his reroll, but eh, uh, Motherfucker. And then you've got Bodhi is that like lock bubble, and then of course Saw I talked about being that bubble of 13. Like I did want to make sure to mention Magva because if you're looking for overlapping bubbles of support that are always there for everyone around, like that's really good. Magva and Kanan together, insane defensive potential. So you have Magva pilot, Kanan pilot, doesn't matter which one, and then the Xwing, the T-65. Oh, I forget what things. Those three pieces of defensive tech would be so infuriating to fly against because all three of them comfortably just pull damage off each other. And then say you have an A-wing in there with selfless to absorb extra fire, like nobody's killing your stuff. Um, so that's certainly something you could build. I believe that all actually fits too. And if you build them out to be offensive, even while those abilities are passively defensive, that's a really good kind of idea. Somewhere as like a starting point there. And that may go straight to Rob because he's the guy that built like the chunky defensive list and then won with that by punching stuff. Totally what happened, right? Yeah, built the chunky defensive list and then punch stuff. Yeah. Uh, but yes, let's see a couple other pieces. I am going to take a quick second to chatter. Apologies if this has gone long. I do want to look at some of the lists that I've built, see what I have not talked about because I'm not sure I have covered everything. I'm fairly certain that I have a list on here that is Saw Crew with some of these B Wings. So we're looking at, and for doubles, you can do Saw Crew and Saw Pilot, which work really well together. That is a funny thing if you're looking at doubles to really think about that. That oftentimes crew and pilot versions of things are meant to fill in each other's gaps. So Saw Crew says you can take a damage to change all your focus results, and Saw Pilot says you can reroll a die if you're damaged. So you use the crew, take a damage to mod your results, and then you reroll a die because you're damaged. Let's see. So I'm looking at, I have changed. No, that's the same one we looked at. Okay. Oh, there we go. Yes. Okay. So I do have another one that I do want to pull up. It's World's Aspirations 2. This is one I actually put together after going through all of this and looking at everything based on all he talked about, what I talked about. Uh, Saw Pilot again, but he's got Hera Crew on there to help him get a more flexible dial. So if he needs to, he can park. He can just park. And then just go ahead and remove stress. And then if he's not damaged yet, or if he's just lost his shields and is damaged yet, he can do that on purpose to go ahead and trigger his friendly reroll, which is great, but it's there. He's also got Selfless, and Selfless plus Saw Crew is another really, really good combo because it gives you a defensive buff across your entire squad. Helps you keep Saw alive, but then also helps you trigger Saw's ability by taking a little bit of chip damage that also does give you the damage condition to give you the free reroll. So I've got Sabine, of course, super cheap. I've got Saw Pilot, who I talked about. And then I've got the two Blue Squadron veterans that double tap, both with sync laser cannons. And then I've got Dutch for the locks. So this is a 5 ship list, super durable piece in Sabine, decently durable piece in Dutch, two double tapping B Wings that shoot twice with a full 6 dice, because they've got 3 primary and 3 synced cannons. I don't have a way to give them calculates, unfortunately. Um, if they had a tech slot and one other loadout, it would be awesome to go ahead and give them the automated targeting priority. That would work just fine on those. It's just like clear stuff. This is a 5 ship list, throws a lot of attack dice, has a lot of efficiency across the board, and just is a really interesting kind of piece to work with. So I really like this one, but I haven't tested it, and I can't say it'll perform all that well. Especially, I think this is vulnerable to I6s. I don't see a good way to deal with that. Because you can either engage at I6, you can bomb, or you can block. And this has potential to do some blockers. Sabine is decent ace play just because she can get in the way and block stuff. Uh, but other than that, I could see this being cut to ribbons by a bunch of ace play. So that's kind of it. We've talked a little bit of circles around rebels. I do think that right now, the strongest meta archetype for rebels is going to be a really, really cross-supporting, durable three ship points fortress. You get the really big pilots with the really good defensive abilities. And I personally would reach for Magva, Kanan, and whoever else fits. So let's actually build that. Let's build it. We got Magva. And in part, this is full disclosure because I really like Magva because the ability reads is really, really strong. And because I ran Magva at Worlds when I went and I did not win. So full disclosure. Uh, Grain of salt. We're going to go Magva. And then we're going to go Kanan VCX. And then we're going to go Biggs and see where we are. Still have 8 points. And now Magva could be Saw. Like, I love her passive defensive ability. Who do we have at 8? Now, at 8, we can go ahead. I think Sabine is the right call because the goal here is to be durable. And at 8 points, Sabine really is it's very hard to beat with optics for offense and clan training. Good doable, of course. And then we've got Biggs. We'll give him a little regen. He's got 7. For another neutral, if you're in the attack arc, you may suffer 1 hit or crit. Or 5. I spent 1 charge. Yeah, we'll go R7. That gives him actual, or excuse me, R2. And just an R2 astromech gives him the extra regen to go ahead and tank some more hits. And just make him more durable. And then we've got Kanan. And then the thing here too is Kanan and Magva passive. Also, oh my god, this works out. It's all I3s. Oh, I love it so much. So you have complete control over who activates when, who attacks when. That's a very powerful piece there, actually. It's only 4 ships. So this is the downside. Magva's ability may never trigger, so that's the downside. Kanan's ability, though, will reliably trigger. And with Biggs and Kanan making Sabine immortal, like this is a very frustrating list. So if you want to make a list that does not die, do this, and then you can just load these up with talents that will. Where's selfless? Selfless. Load these up with talents that they can use to keep each other alive. I think he has compassion. Yeah. And if you do compassion the child, that's a really good way to recharge some of your force. So you've got 4 force there. That already is incredibly frustrating because you're just like, no, you're not rolling that many dice. You roll 2 or you roll 1. This doesn't say to a minimum of 0 either. Although I don't know if that's so. If you've got a TIE fighter with a weapons fail, you're shooting at your range 2. You're just like, don't even bother. Um, which is frustrating. But yeah, and then I'm still looking at Magva. I've got 14 points to put in 2 crew and a sensor slot and an illicit and a modification. All ways that could potentially make this just even more durable. Um, yeah. Huh. How infuriating. I don't want to fly against this. Another advantage of this being so durable is also you just get to keep Kanan alive and throw his 4 die attacks all over the board. We will go ahead and give him that. I don't think there's any benefit to giving him the dorsal turret if I don't have a sheathipede, although just like multiple attack arcs is good. Let's see, Ezra Bridger. Still have the loadout. No, okay. So the downside is I can't do Ezra for the bonus turret attack if I also have the child. I think that may be better. And then I have 7 loadout. Okay, so we've got Ezra Kanan, which also is lovely and thematic. Uh, and I could go ahead and go up to the Ion Cannon turret. Let's go ahead and do it because the dorsal turret isn't going to do a ton of damage. Excuse me. And that gives you a little bit of extra control where you can eye on stuff and you don't worry about losing offensive output because you're already getting because it's a bonus attack. Um, and then we've got the crew. So he's only got 4 points left. Huh, ooh, okay. You have ways to just remove red or orange tokens from your squad. Oh, yes. So again, on the conversation of things that are like I'm incredibly jealous of, Ursa Ren. Ursa Ren crew. If you're running these B-Wings I keep talking about and you're trying to figure out a pilot that'll give you locks, use Ursa Ren instead. Um, I mean, this doesn't give locks to other ships, but Ursulin is incredibly good here. Okay, so um, in that just to read it, you can maintain up to 2 locks. Each lock must be on a different object. So really good with the Ezra bonus attack too. After a friendly ship at range 0 to 3 is locked by an enemy ship, you may perform a lock action. So any of your ships are locked. You're just like, okay, I'm going to target lock 2 of your ships. Okay, yeah. So it doesn't work that way. But if you're locked multiple times, you have ways to acquire multiple locks, which makes that 4 primary attack value dramatically more frightening. But I think I can take Zeb Crew, but I don't think I want to. Yeah. Well, you perform yeah, no. I don't want opponents to be able to modify their dice. Maybe. But I don't have any ordnance in this, so I don't need that. Let's see, one shot. Yeah. You'll have 1 point left over. Okay. Yeah, I like that list. And I'd be curious to see what else you could build. You can probably downgrade Kanan to something less than 19 because that's expensive. You can probably downgrade Magva, but both of them have such potent abilities here. It might work. I don't know. Anyway, this has gotten long enough. Till next time. Cheers.